Yesterday, I fell asleep. I don't know how, watching the presidential debate because it was like early in the morning here in Israel. So I would like to have to tell you my point of view about the debate between. Wait, skip. And I really felt sorry for the moderator because clearly I remember another moderator. What I'm trying to recall his name. He's just who did such a better job. I think the moderator was not able to handle things. Clearly, you needed a very strong personality to handle Trump, and this guy just let Trump interrupt constantly.
On presidential debates, the commission has designed the format,
So there was a format, but Trump just ignored everything, and he wasn't able to control him.
Ginsburg on the court. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
So before I do that, let me save you the time. I was going to go over what I thought were the important points. But before that, let me read you a commentary that I read a few, and I think this one sums it up. This was by Keith Boykin. He says, Joe Biden clearly won Tuesday night's debate, but that's not the point. What Americans just witnessed was the worst presidential debate in American history and a compelling argument to cancel the rest of the season's presidential debates. From the very first question, President Donald Trump was rude, disrespectful, and unpresidential. But his responses to three of the moderator Chris Wallace's questions were outright disqualifying. First, Trump calling the upcoming election in which we are seeing a surge in mail-in ballots a fraud was outrageous. We've never seen an American president openly undermine the integrity of the American election system right before an election. This is what the dictators do, not democratic leaders. Let me update you. This is exactly what happens in Israel as well. They always blame the system for why the other guy was almost winning, so there's a lot of parallel lines between Israel and the US on this matter, at least, and many matters also. Second, Trump refused to forcibly condemn white supremacists and right-wing militia groups. Welcome to Israel. This is exactly what our prime minister does. We just happen to have not white supremacists because we're actually not considered white according to the neo-Nazis guidelines. Jews are not white, but in Israel we do have right-wing militia groups. One of them happens to be nearby, and yes, they have like a little center here. And not only are they not condemned, but despite the fact that their rabbi sat in prison for half a year for encouraging violence against non-Jews, specifically Arabs, they're able to carry on activities in a center just a few meters away from where I'm taping this. So our prime minister has never condemned right-wing militia groups. They've never had to face trial. It took like a few years till one of them had to face trial for a horrific act of violence that should never have taken place in a country that's a democracy. But when you let the right wing take over, don't be surprised. And the divide in our country is very parallel to the one in America. The divide between left and right, and the inability to express yourself and even to protest anymore as you could in a democracy is definitely very similar to America. Even after one of his own supporters was recently charged with killing 2 people and injuring a third, shows just how insensitive he is to American raging race problem. I don't think Israel has such a race problem, but we do have, because Arabs and Jews are not races, but we do definitely have a problem between left and right, between people that have different political opinions, and so forth. Pressed by moderator Chris Wallace on whether he would condemn white supremacist supporters, Trump said, "Sure, I'm willing to do that," but then seemed to walk it back, telling Proud Boys, a far right extremist group, to stand back and stand by. It was a disgrace that gave aid and comfort to racist bigots all across America. Yes, that's what they do. People like him, people like the Prime Minister Netanyahu, they encourage people that are extremists, right? And I don't see, I see that there's extremist left that are also damaging, but for some reason, the extreme right, especially for Jews, should be a very red light, and sadly, we are not condemning them enough, or even at all in Israel, and definitely not in the US. And sadly, this is a cooperation of racist leaders that really is not going to lead us to a good place. Third, in the midst of the worst public health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic crisis in 80 years, Trump provided no plan for what he would do about these crises if given another 4 years in office. Instead, with more than 200,000 Americans dead from COVID-19, Trump took credit for bringing back college football. Well, we have the same thing. Prime Minister Netanyahu was so proud how Israel is so good and how we're the first ones to have closure and we were the first ones to react. And then we are now we are number one in having the most cases of COVID-19, not the most deaths, but the most cases. And we are a small population. And that has to do with also the inability of controlling ultra-right, ultra-orthodox extremists who gather and completely completely ignore the rules where we're supposed to wear masks and not to congregate, and we're not supposed to even go into synagogues that are inside. And yet I had witnessed, and I've even reported it, but got no help from the authorities, that ultra-Orthodox right-wing gather in a very crowded synagogue, in sharp contrast to other synagogues around who were outside. People like the Lubavitchers were outside, all wearing masks, all keeping distance, respecting the laws. And then we have an extremist right-wing militia group that refuses to listen to the COVID-19. We have anti-Zionist, ultra-Orthodox people that are congregating in masses and are making our health system completely overburdened. And we are a small country with far fewer means than the US. Although we do have a health system that is better than the US because it's everybody can have, it's affordable, but it's also very limited because we are a small nation compared to the US. We're only 9 million people, so we do not have the health possibilities and the wealth. So when we have so many cases of COVID-19 that are now a number one world record, we are in a difficult situation, which is why we're in full closure at the moment. Everything is closed except supermarkets and special needs schools, which I'm going to be attending tomorrow. Wish me luck. Well, working in tomorrow. While the president spent the entire night attacking, lying, distracting, rambling, and interrupting, Biden was calm and intelligent, often looking directly into the camera to push past the spectacle and address the American people directly. Biden asked, "Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in the light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID?" Finally, while Trump gave vague promises of immaculate air, immaculate water, Biden gave specific proposals on climate change and other issues. The contrast was dramatic. America should be ashamed we ever allowed Trump to be president. I think the people that need to be ashamed are not ashamed. Just like in Israel, the people that need to be ashamed are not ashamed, and they're very happy to have a prime minister that has no respect for the law, no respect for rules, and is constantly attacking other people on a personal level and not on issues. And this is exactly
which will strip 20 million people from.
So I wanted to.
I've already fixed it. He has never offered a plan. Fixed it to an extent.
He has
Obamacare,
never done
He's constantly attacking. Dress-wise, I have to say that Trump looks really good. I like his red and blue tie. He's dressed well compared to Biden. Biden looks a bit shabby. And the other thing is that Trump is a big guy, and he speaks big. He's like a bear. And Biden is a gentle guy. He's like a really nice person. And nice guys finish last is sadly true for politics, because it seems that people a lot of voters are impressed by people who can speak and be aggressive. And this is why aggressive leaders, fascist almost, are winning.
Might know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both
He doesn't
speaking
let
at the
him
same
talk.
time,
And it's too
let the president. Go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had to choose.
Okay, let's skip that.
Was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan.
Exactly.
I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you,
you have 2 minutes, sir.
if we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would...
Well, he goes to a tanning studio and he looks amazing. And while Biden doesn't do cosmetic surgery,
said that President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did.
He probably gets Botox besides the tanning, so he looks so much better than Biden physically, which is important in these. Sadly, the voters also look at the way the candidate looks. He looks much healthier than Biden.
Gowns, we got the masks,
Sadly.
We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators, and now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying.
He is a very good speaker. He uses hand gestures in the correct way. He should be studied when people talk about speaking. He and Prime Minister Netanyahu as well, they're very talented speakers. The content has nothing to do with it, but he knows how to speak. He speaks in a clear voice. I'm not talking about the content, which is completely outrageous. I'm talking about the way he talks. I just want to show you.
The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. Nobody
okay, so look at Biden for a minute.
The
how he
tax
talks.
bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation.
Oh, he talks and talks and talks.
Pascal's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve?
So,
booming economy. He
okay.
done by Wall Street firms points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years. Number one.
He looks
And
really
number
old.
two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would.
No matter what he says, when you look at a person, and sadly we are visual creatures, he looks shabby. I don't know. He doesn't use Botox. He doesn't use tanning studios. And his tie, he could have taken a tie. This tie is shabby. Who told him to use this? Doesn't he have one advisor who told him to use something with stronger colors? He looks very pale. And he talks very quietly. It reminds me of the guns Netanyahu contrast. We had two candidates, and Gantz is very soft spoken, very decent guy, and Netanyahu is a killer. And it's the same thing. You've got a shark against a, I don't know, what is a nice fish? A swordfish? No. A nice little fish, a nice fish, a decent fish, but that's not what wins.
About buying American. That we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking
So
to deal with the rate.
Even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters.
so he's working. He did the job. He is scaring people. Be scared of the left. The left is the enemy. I mean, whether it used to be communism, now the left. And the same thing in Israel. It's exactly the same. The left are the enemy. And he's doing a good job. I don't want to mention another world leader who took over Europe a few decades ago, who did the same thing, blaming a certain group of people. This works, and he's using the oldest trick in the book: blame, scapegoat a certain group, and also make people scared. Tell them they will have no security under Biden.
Why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago.
So divide, divide, divide. Who are the Democrats? Are they aliens from space, or are they Americans who have other political opinions? This division that Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing exactly. This is like there are clones almost of the same system of the left is to blame, scapegoating the left, and division. And it's called divide and rule.
If you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands. And
So let's see the racist
peaceful
comment.
protest is. Violence is never a protest.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town
President Trump.
and
He's
burn
good,
down
he's
your
good.
stores and kill people all
President
over the
Trump
place?
is good at using fear.
No, it's
I'm not
not,
asking-
but you say it is.
President
did not
Trump, I'd
say
like to continue with the
Yes,
issue
go
of
ahead,
race. I
please.
promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place. And
Fighting racism is a radical. It's like absolutely absurd.
know it, and so does
What
everybody
is
else.
radical,
And he would know.
What is
Oh, it's
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really they were teaching people to hate our country. And
Fighting racism is teaching to hate our country. Criticizing racism is to hate the country. This is exactly Prime Minister Netanyahu. If we criticize him or we criticize anything that he does, we are teaching to, we are not patriots. We are not pro-Israel if we criticize anything he does.
I'm going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place. It's a racist place. And
They're not teaching it. They're facing the facts that there's racism.
teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's
Oh,
the racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this.
don't.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware.
He's intelligent. He's amazing. But he's so calm and quiet. And that's not who's going to win. Maybe if he was running for president in some little island in the Pacific, he'd win, But this is America. And America has a lot of very nasty people who love Trump. Just like in Israel, we have a lot of extreme people that love force, power, violence.
What other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference.
Wait, where's the
Mr. President, you're going to Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
We had
many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and/or to black
police.
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to.
Well, I just want to see what he refuses to condemn.
In cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
Good question.
It's a party issue. You could bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200% crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if
he's not going to lose his radical right supporters.
Got to run this country, and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone.
So he's using fear-mongering. It really works with voters. So I'm looking for the part where he refuses to condemn.
Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable.
Look here. Oh, really?
Here's the thing.
I asked him to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street, and they shot him. And for 3 days...
Stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it? I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing. From the right wing.
What are you saying?
I'm willing to do...
Everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing. So you clearly don't want to lose your right wing. There's a saying in Judaism that you always see the aposel b'mumo poselhu. The person, when you criticize someone, you are criticizing for what is wrong with you. So he's criticizing Joe Biden for not wanting to lose his radical supporters. But what is he doing? He doesn't want to lose his right-wing radical supporters. And then he says everything is from the left, which is completely absurd. And
I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Say it.
What do you want to call him? Give me a name.
White supremacists and white supremacists and
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what.
Stand back and stand by? What kind of a condemnation is it, stand by? Stand by is when you want people to stand by is before you do something. Like you have like standby for your flight is stand by in case I need you. Please stand by. When I'm a president, I'll give you freedom to do whatever you want to the left.
Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing directive.
It's not a right-wing problem, right? Neo-Nazis are not a right-wing problem, no.
It's a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what his FBI director said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
That's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no idea.
Antifa is a dangerous,
all right,
radical
gentlemen, we're now moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president...
He says you have to be careful, they'll overthrow you. So, again, the fear, he's good at what he's doing. He's a mafia hitman. And you have a mafia hitman against a decent guy. Who's going to win the battle? The mafia hitman. Because he has all this mafia behind him.
I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And
Very
in this
good.
case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of
So,
Say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got
No,
$3.5 million.
That's right. And by the way,
Mr.
my
President,
son.
wait a minute. Mr. President, you're
so he made it all personal. He started to talk about the sons. So let's look at Trump's sons. Okay, they're not taking drugs. They're just shooting animals in Africa and taking photos with them. The great guys, while Joe Biden's sons went to the military at least.
agreed that both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted.
And the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know, Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter
you know,
got
Bo.
thrown. Hunter got thrown out of the military.
He didn't even go to the military. He didn't even go to Vietnam because his feet were flat. I've never heard of such a ridiculous thing. He went to a military school and never even went to the military. And he's criticizing people who went to the military. At least in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu not only went to the military, but was fighting in one of the most dangerous units, combat unit that he risked his life. His brother actually died freeing people from terrorists. So in our country, at least, we don't have people that don't serve in the army as leaders. We only have them as influencing politics in the extreme ultra-Orthodox non-Zionist groups that are in our parliament and are beyond law, beyond order, and will never have to face any sort of restrictions and can not have to go to the army, while everybody, even my children who never even were born in this country, were never born here, never lived here, are, because they're Israeli citizens, have to go to the army. But ultra-Orthodox people who were born here, grew up here, do not have to go to the army. This is absolutely ridiculous. And especially since we have such a dangerous situation where we need as many soldiers as we can. We are a small people surrounded by a lot of enemies. And yet, we have a group of radical right that don't even think about serving in the army. And we have Donald Trump, who thinks he can attack Joe Biden's sons who served in the military when he didn't even serve in the military.
He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It
for
wasn't
cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president.
Oh, so he's attacking. Like, his sons are so perfect. His sons had a job because he made jobs for them in the Trump. All his children work for him. All his children have a job in the administration. So, otherwise I don't think they'd have a job either. Who knows? He's such a nasty guy.
Clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at
So now global warming. I love this
the
one.
number of cars purchased, we have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car.
So he's like,
coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two,